Joyous Kucha Kwanzaa. Hello, and today is day two of Kucha Kwanzaa 2020. My name is Gary the Rainbow, and today I'm going to be learning and reading with you all today about day two of Kucha Kwanzaa. Day two is called Siku Ili, second day. And so, how we're going to start off with today is Tigani. As a reminder, Tigani means what's the tea, which is what's the is from the language of Swahili for the word Gani. And so, for today, for the second day, the group principle we're talking about Afia, which stands for health. The symbol is fruit matunda. As you can see here, I do have my fake fruit for the purposes of the altar. However, we eat fresh fruit on day two, the Matunda second day symbol, which symbolizes the African harvest celebrations, the rewards of productive and collective labor, and food provided for our nourishment, as well as transforming our fruit from a term of degradation to a term of uplift and support. And so, having fruit today is very symbolic for both reasons. And so, today would be more apropos because typically, when we eat fresh fruits and vegetables, fruits contribute to the positive effect of our overall health. And today, the color for the candle is passion. Just a reminder that for today's candles, I didn't have enough time to get rainbow candles for the Kuchu Kwanzaa celebration, so I'm using my Kwanzaa candles for my Kinara from before. And so today's candle is red, which stands for passion, blood, HIV, and struggle. And today's principle asks us to promote and protect our individual and collective well being, and to prevent and treat infection, disease, and illnesses in our communities. So, how can you observe today? You can reward your mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual body. You can take a walk or jog outside at sunrise or sunset, get a checkup, get tested, a day of fasting. Doesn't have to be literally food. It can be conceptualized broadly into fasting from something of some sort of your choosing. Hold conversations about issues most directing our communities, engage in yoga, dance class, workout, and start a nutrition journal. And last but not least, learn more about illnesses that affect our communities. So day two of Kuchu Kwanzaa 2020, Siku Ilu, is the group is Apia Health, and the symbol is Matunda fruit. And so today we're going to be talking about health in a general sense as it applies to Black LGBTQIA individuals. And so, how can I observe today? So, the things that I'm taking from how to be observed today is to hold a conversation about issues most directly affecting our community as Black LGBTQIA folks, and to learn more about illnesses that affect our communities. More specifically, I want to talk about things in a more broader sense, more of a macro level today. So, I'm going to move right on to this article. I just like to do research. Call me a nerd, but I like to just read academic articles for a variety of reasons. Mostly articles that deal with sociological topics, identity politics, and how that intersects with the economy and just our way of existing as human beings. More specifically, through the lens of being Black and LGBTQIA identity. So right here, this article that I've read and took some notes on and want to discuss today was from the National LGBT Health Education Center, which is a program of the Fenway Institute. And so they published this report in June of 2019. And it's about a year and a half old at this point. It's called Understanding and Addressing the Social Determinants of Health for Black LGBTQ People, a way forward for health centers. So, understanding and addressing the societal determinants of health for Black and LGBTQ people. And so, a determinant is a factor or a condition that has some influence that's going to have an impact on how something, an outcome is going to be, or is going to have an impact on the nature of something. So, I'm going to show you the article. I will put the link here on where to access this at. So, the article summary is to commit to adequately and fully provide health services for Black African American people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer, or also known as Black LGBTQ people. Again, it's not all inclusive, but we're just going to have to stop at some point of the acronym. um, is to recognize and to help address the social determinants affecting your health. Further, it is to confront our own personal views as healthcare providers, not necessarily healthcare providers, but the articles coming from that point of view, to confront our own personal views and institutional approaches day in, day out. Finally, it is to celebrate the resilience of Black LGBT people and to examine how, as healthcare providers of all races and ethnicities, we can contribute to and build on resilience narratives despite the inaccurate yet widely distributed narratives of risk and deficits. So this article is broken down into two different areas, the first half and the second half. The first half is talking about contextual factors. So talking about basically things that are going to make or break positive or negative health situations for Black LGBTQ folks. And so it looks at the contextual factors at three different levels. Structural determinants, more at the, like I said, the bigger macro level. Interpersonal determinants, of how you're engaging in a smaller group format on the smaller level, and then individual determinants, things that are affecting the person individually. And that's the first half of this article. The second half of the article talks about the way forward and how healthcare providers can move forward in terms of to be more equitable for addressing the health needs of Black LGBTQIA folks. So, the contextual factors. So, structural determinism, the first thing we're going to talk about, the macro level. And a lot of this we already know. A lot of us may not have the vocabulary or the formal education and background to put labels on these words, but we do have a just overall understanding and it's not actually acceptance, but understanding of what's been happening to us as Black queer folks here. And so both we understand that we structurally we excuse me here, we face oppression at multiple levels and through multiple ways. And oppression intersectionality, the intersectionality of oppression happens because of intersectionality of minoritized identities. Ooh, that's a lot to say. So being Black in a society that's majority white is one area of dealing with racism. And as we know about racism here in the United States of America and even globally against Black and Pan African identities. In addition to that, the other layer is having being LGBTQIA, so your sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, and being a minoritized individual in that regards as well too, in a world that is primarily cisgender and heterosexual as well. So these systems of oppression are really intersectional, and they affect us in amplified ways a lot of times. And so basically, we just have unfair treatment and just biased policies against us relating to, housing, jobs, places of leisure, health care, etc. And in terms of marginalization, talk about additional factors in terms of intersectional amplification of the oppression. So also, also a layer that a lot of folks have, but not all Black LGBTQIA folks, will be socioeconomically marginalized. That compounded burden of being underserved and not economically stable, and just searching for basic healthcare needs. And then also folks who are women identified and or transgender identified are subjected to violent brutality against people, police brutality and brutality by people in general, police brutality against Black folks as a whole. A lot of trans identified folks are experiencing brutality and death as a whole because of the stigma that's surrounded around their gender identity and expression. And And people who do survive are typically dealing with a lot of mental health issues and post-traumatic stress disorder and other related issues having to deal with those traumatic experiences. And so white LGBTQ people do not face these oppressions and these issues as much as black LGBTQIA folks. So let's begin to go more onto the interpersonal determinants. And so this is something that really resonated with me in terms of interpersonal determinants because um, it really told me about how things can be in life, and I really didn't know how to put words to it. For example, being black, you feel safe in black spaces around for certain things, but when it comes to being LGBTQIA, you may not be fully supported, and vice versa. In LGBTQIA spaces, you may not be fully supported based off your race, especially as a white pride, as a primarily white area. And even though it may be a white LGBTQI primarily area that may have good intentions, some folks may not understand systemic barriers and how microaggressions that they still employ and still engage in have an effect. And then so for us interpersonal determinants, we have to, as black queer people, I can always say this is we determine boundaries, like how much of a relationship we're going to have with these black heterosexual folks or these white and non-black LGBTQIA folks. And and how much we're willing to negotiate our relationship with them and how do we have relationships with them. Individual determinants. So, the last determinant I want to talk about individual determinants. It talks about how LGBTQIA people and as Black people, we disproportionately engage in health struggles more than the general population, such as depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress, substance abuse, suicide, and and this is often a response to internal and external stressors produced by existing in an oppressive environment both from your racial identity, your sexual orientation identity, gender identity, and expression. And so, and then top of that, trying to access healthcare to deal with this. And the healthcare system is not always responsive to us when we reach out for help. And when we do reach out for help and we do find a mental health therapist, the system is overwhelmingly white and overwhelmingly heterosexual as well. So we may not be able to find a mental health care specialist who can fully understand and engage with us and to conduct mental health sessions in a way that is very needed, especially when it comes to talking about topics of oppression and privilege are integral to the counseling services. So there were some determinants, and so the way forward. So increasing the awareness and integration of Black LGBTQ people of our lived experiences. So it's one thing to read publications about us, but that's not enough. So actually increasing awareness, having us at the table. To hear our voices, when it comes to policy changes, ideas, rules. And so hire us qualified individuals for positions in human resources, staffing, healthcare, education, and leadership roles. So that way we can contribute to the ongoing discourse about the Black LGBTQIA community, and that way we can be further serving. Examining and challenging our personal views and behaviors. And this one really resonated with me because even if you're both Black and LGBTQIA, it doesn't mean you completely understand and completely relate to the next person who may have the same identity labels as well too. So, for example, a Black gay male may not have the same experiences as a Black lesbian. Versus a Black person who may identify as a transgender woman who is um, before they come to the realization of the gender identity. And so the problems and struggles that happen with us individually may be very different. However, the commonality that we all have is we have these struggles and we have these compounded effects of these struggles in our lives. And so healthcare, I'll call out the healthcare, assessing the cultures of the healthcare system. Are there physical spaces and are you distributing information that is affirming and positive representation to Black LGBTQ people? Does the institution have explicit mission on serving Black LGBTQIA folks? and Black people are often killed by law enforcement. And so, does the institution takes a public internal stance on national events that are relevant to the lives of Black people and the lives of LGBTQ people and the lives of people who live both as Black and LGBTQIA? Providing resources, resources for those, especially those who are socioeconomically marginalized, when it comes to housing, employment, transportation, and food insecurity, um, and then supporting the resiliency. Last thing I want to end with is we've been focusing on negative, 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 and how can we help, help, help? But can we just celebrate ourselves? Can we celebrate us? And instead of seeing us as a risk, I hear that so many times that, oh, you're Black and queer, and you're an at-risk population, and all of us probably heard that at some point or another. Instead, why can't we be seeing a more of a positive lens? The glasses half full type of situation. And so instead, see the I like this article. It says, "See at promise for a future for good health and well-being, anchored in our own resiliency and supported by our abilities as staff, providers, and institutions to provide services to contribute to their resiliency." So with support, and our resiliency is facilitated by our own coping strategies. We build communities, we build houses, we engage in the arts, we engage in spirituality, or a combination of those things. And so in terms of health, Black LGBT folks, I'm calling out. Get yourself checked out. Take care of your mental health, your physical health, emotional health, spiritual health. And today's Sunday here, so we can't get tested or anything. But I just want to have this conversation about health issues relating to Black LGBTQIA folks. Well, again, my name is Gary the Rainbow. Today was Siku Ili, which is the second day, which is we talked about Afia, which is health. The second day of Kuchu Kwanzaa 2020. So I hope you all have a joyous Kuchu Kwanzaa. And I will be back here tomorrow to talk about day 3 and principle number 4.